What is up, guys? Welcome to the Tony and Dakota podcast. Today, we got a virtual guest from outer space, and Tony's going to introduce him.
For people who can't see or just listening to the audio, Michael put his background as like out in space looking down on the earth. And Michael's out of this world. Michael's in the same Future Flipper All-Stars program as us. That's how we originally met him. And it's just been awesome getting to know Michael. And also, every time we go to Vegas, Michael gives us a place to stay, which we're going to talk about that a little bit, how he's infamously generous. So Michael Sue has multiple businesses. It looked like he even tried trading at one point. What I could find from my research, I was like, trading? I didn't know Michael was doing trading. But also, he's got an Amazon store. We don't know how it's doing necessarily. His flipping business, wholesaling business, real estate business, going really well. We're going to talk about some of the struggles now that the market is changing, how things are looking. He's also a super, super smart guy with his primary income coming from software. So really high level software guy, knows stuff that Dakota and I will never understand unless we put in hours and hours and hours with our little monkey brains compared to Michael. This is Michael Sue.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Was there anything that Tony said you felt like was untrue?
You guys are not monkey brains.
Oh. Well,
based on Tony's results, good at the self-deprecating humor.
Yeah, say based on results, that may be true.
Yeah, we could just start with that, because my third question is, we took a personality test in Future Flipper, not knowing that it had an IQ component. And I think that Michael scored the highest out of the entire mastermind. And then we found out that Dakota and I were toward the bottom. And then they explained how that's actually a good thing, because they wanted us to feel good. And they're like, you need to be lower IQ, with each other if you're going to be working with each other consistently, because the high IQ people and the low IQ people have a really hard time consistently working with each other because they're not on the same wavelength. Do you find it hard or difficult to relate, communicate, and work beside monkey brain people like us?
I feel like you're misquoting them slightly. Right. So they said like this test that we took was for how fast you learn, right? So there's different kinds of smart, right? But they did say that like people who have a similar cognitive score tend to not get frustrated at each other as much, because like you might move faster than someone else is keeping up, and then that can get frustrating, right? So actually it does kind of happen sometimes, like on my team, where I'm like, hey, let me just explain everything. I run through it really quick. I feel like it's super obvious, and I actually ran my VAs also through the cognitive test. And after that Gary Harper presentation, I was like, oh, okay, so this is why like it sometimes feels like they never get what I'm trying to say. So like nowadays, like I'm more conscious of trying to break it down a little bit more, having trainings, so that like they can actually give me feedback on like, no, I don't understand what you're saying, like you're going too fast, or that like, I'm making a couple logical jumps where like I need to kind of break it down a little bit more. But yeah, no, I mean like I do, like once I took that and he explained what it was, I was like, okay, well, yeah, I do learn fast. There's a lot of other types of smart too, that like, I'm just like people with photographic memory, for instance. That's a different kind of smart. But wouldn't necessarily score well on the test we took.
What do you think are other types of smartness? Like go through what you think is actually intelligence, like, because obviously like you're very high, it seems like, in like, book smart, or like, what would you say your gifts are? Like, what are you smart at? And then what are the other types that you see?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like the ability to grasp concepts. So like, I mean, you said book smart, but actually like I wasn't the best student in school. Yeah, no. So I was kind of like an A-. I could always be at exactly like
I was like an
90% or
A
89
minus.
point.
An A minus is like not the best in school. An A minus. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I don't know, like that's from where I come from. That is actually like not the best.
Wow.
But but like the thing is like, so I guess that was more of a motivation thing. So I'd actually sometimes take tests without really studying and then grasping the concept on the test. And then I come backwards and actually like, oh, okay, like this is how everything works. Go back to the beginning of the test and like now be able to answer them. So I'd
Mm.
be learning from other questions that would teach me how to do the questions before, which, was always interesting. And that was actually something I noticed early on. My parents actually had me take the SAT when I was like 10 or something. And it was for this like youth program, right? It was called CTY, I think, Center for Talented Youth. So it was like a little summer school for kids at Stanford. And you had to take the SAT score to kind of get into it. And um, you know, I found out later that a lot of kids actually prep for it. Like their parents had them like, take classes and stuff. I remember it like pretty clearly because it was really weird. Like I showed up at West Valley College, this community college where I grew up, and I'm sitting next to all these high schoolers. I'm like a little 10-year-old, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And because it was like we were taking the SATs, and I literally remember sitting down, and it literally was like the test we took. Like I was figuring out what these symbols meant that I'd never seen, like on like a, like on a like on some trigonometry, thing when I was like 10. But it was like, oh well, there's only four options, right? And then you start backing things out, and then you go to the next question, and then it explains something that might help you with the previous question or a couple questions ago. So
Hmm.
yeah.
And what do you think the other kinds of intelligence where you allude to them, but like a lot of people I feel like don't really appreciate them, I would say. Like especially in the school system. Like obviously in the business world we appreciate every kind of intelligence,
Yeah.
but I say the school system doesn't. So what would you say are like, other types of intelligence?
Yeah, well, I think like I consider like photographic memory definitely a type of intelligence. Um, and especially for book smart, like there's a lot of types of majors and stuff where like actually just being able to memorize things is going to get you straight A's, right?
Hmm.
So there's some people who like they look at a book once and they can recall like viscerally the page, like what it looked like in their head, and that's kind of crazy. Um, there's people who are emotionally smart, right? Who can read people,
Hmm.
who kind of can work well with people, and I'd kind of play that into like what people call street smart too. There's something about people being able to navigate the world. There's also like um, not necessarily people who come up with who like learn things fast, but then people who are creative in terms of they can take what they've already learned and then apply it in a way where um, where then all of a sudden they seem extremely intelligent, right? Because they're able to take what they do know and apply it in ways that other people don't even think of.
Hmm. I like it.
So, for viewers and people who don't know you, you're gonna have to brag a little bit. I want to like lay a foundation of like what you've been able to accomplish
Yeah.
and like kind of what your business looks like right now. So, like, how many rental properties do you have? How many flips have you done? What's your revenue look like? How many employees do you have?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a full-time job, so just just keep that in mind.
You do?
Um,
I did not know that.
yeah, that's why it's so hard for us to schedule is to schedule one of these calls because Tony and I, you guys don't work past 5, and that's 3 p.m. for me. And so
Yeah. We're trying to
yeah.
not work past 5. How long have you been at your job for too? Like talk to us about like your job and then how you're doing all this other stuff too.
Yeah. So I've always kind of been in startups. I've been at this company for 7 years now, actually.
Wow.
So this is a startup, but it's been a while. It's been a minute. So yeah, I guess like just to start off, like I've always been in tech. If you're familiar with startup world, like the first job out of college was Y Combinator, which is a prestigious accelerator. So I actually did the whole like drop out of college thing, and then parents are gonna kill me, went back to school kind of thing. And then I actually tried to start my own company for about a year. I honestly like I should have talked to Dakota because what I was really missing is sales. I didn't. I was kind of building in the vacuum, like way nerdier, like engineers sitting in my room just building, but needed to talk to more customers. And then I joined the company I'm currently at, called Blueboard, and we basically sell experiences for like large Fortune 500 companies. So we plan, budget, and basically send people to do cool things, usually as rewards or like tenure for people who are at certain companies. So yeah, right now, like, I started when the pandemic happened. I used to be a digital nomad, so I was traveling a lot. Pandemic hit, nothing to do. And I decided to buy real estate that I've never seen before as my new hobby. And so I started buying out of state. Actually bought in Indiana was my first one.
Wow.
So shout out to Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, and then I kind of have bought in different states over time. But ultimately I've kind of realized that I like to have a certain level of economies of scale. Like it's cool to when you see a random deal, a random state, and you're like, oh, that's gonna work. But it's just so much more work. And then also like as I'm building my team, which I'll talk about in a sec, and the Clark score part, it's hard for them to keep up when you're like running around changing strategies, like bringing in new people all the time. Um, and so like I have a team of 4 VAs right now, and then I have one boots on the ground in Denver who's kind of running the flips. And so basically in all my rental markets, I don't have boots on the ground. It's really my property manager, and a contractor that I generally use. Um, yeah, and then we partner with people as well sometimes. For instance, we have some flips we're partnered on California, but that's more of a personal relationship type thing.
So then how
Yeah.
many rental properties do you have right now? Because I know some of them are virtual. Altogether, how many
Yeah,
rentals do you have?
27. Yeah,
20,
27
27?
units. Hmm.
That's quite a bit more than the last time we talked.
You have 27?
Yeah, I thought I told you guys I had 27 last time.
I
No,
think you told
holy
us you had
smoke.
like 8.
I thought he had like 10. I was like, 27? And what states are you in? Like, how many you got in each state? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina, so Fort Bragg,
Yep.
military town. I'm in Indianapolis,
Yep.
so closer to home to you guys. I've got a quad in Denver, and then
That's a
I've
big
got
deal.
Syracuse, New York.
Wow.
Yeah, the Denver one was a good purchase. That was like
That's
early 2020.
that sounds like a home run. So are you in the 7-figure club yet?
I am, depending on how much the property values drop.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I am right now.
Yeah. That's the funniest thing about like having a net worth of 1 million is like it can go at any time. So I was like, yeah, I'm a millionaire. And then like
Yeah,
tomorrow I may not be.
Oh yeah. It's still not nearly as bad as being like a crypto
yeah.
millionaire though. Like holy crap, I would
Oh
hate to
yeah, oh yeah.
tell everybody I was a millionaire
Yeah,
because
if you
3 weeks later you look so dumb.
yeah, you go from billion to nothing. That happens to so many people.
I'm an NFT millionaire. Okay, guys, I need a job.
Yeah. Guys, I might have borrowed money to buy my NFTs. Now you're in like debt.
So, how many flips have you done this year, and what does your total what does your gross profit look like?
Yeah, so we actually have a bunch that aren't completed yet. Things are slowing down a little bit. We've done let's see. Sometimes it's hard to count the projects, but I think I can definitely look it up, verify afterwards, but I think it's 8 flips, one or well actually so 9, but then we have one that's converting potentially to an Airbnb just because of market conditions. It's a mountain home and people just aren't buying as much, non-primaries. Then we have like a purpose purchase, like purpose built Airbnb, or like one that we bought specifically for Airbnb. And then buying rentals. Um, that's my bread and butter. I still, especially in this market, I like my rental markets better. A lot easier to deal with. I think the rentals are just generally more stable.
Yeah.
And like if the prices fluctuate, like I'll just wait it out, right? Like as long as it's cash flowing, like I don't really care as much. It's really the flips, especially flips in major like kind of like the hotter markets, like the ones you think of as expensive, right? In our case, Denver, you're buying at LTVs that are higher than 75%. So you end up in situations if things take longer where you don't necessarily, you're not able to refi without putting a lot of cash into it, right? Because like if you have to refi like 5% or 10% into a property at an 800 grand purchase or ARV, that's like 80 grand,
Yeah.
40 grand, you have a couple of those and that's where you start to have challenges.
Yeah.
So far, your 8 flips, you average 50K a flip, 100K a flip. So you made like 400 to 800K so far this year off of flips.
Always in the middle.
No, so a lot of them are finishing up because I didn't start flipping until this year, basically. I actually only did rentals. So like the majority of my 2020, like when I started in like mid 2020 and 2021, all of that was just equity gain. Because my thinking back then was, hey, I got my 6-figure salary, um, and I'll just do burrs because like I don't really need the cash, right? I think it's as you're growing your team a bit more and you're trying to think bigger, where you're like, okay, now I really need income because got to pay people, right? You got to pay Andrew, you got to pay office manager, you guys have an office. Like there starts to be things where you're like, okay, well, I can't keep just trying to keep equity because and you might leave deals some money in the deals or something might happen, and then you start thinking, well, I should just flip some of these, right? I'm sure like you guys kind of went through the same similar process because you guys were pretty rental focused in the beginning. And
Yep.
at some point, you're like, okay, we just need more cash on hand, and decide to flip or wholesale more, right?
Right. So with the market shifting and everything that's going on now, are you going to adjust your like thinking after these flips are all done, or what are you kind of thinking after you get done with these 8, 10 flips?
Yeah. So we are we're probably going to change our strategy a little bit. So well, one is like right now with the market. Okay, so I guess there's two vectors, right? One is like, how do we want to do flips going forward, and how do we want to do rentals going forward? And the second part is how are we adjusting today for the current market?
Have you been thinking about investing in real estate?
It's not like what you see on HGTV.
We created a course to show you how to really invest and create a profitable flipping and wholesaling business.
We give you marketing strategies like how to pull lists, who we target, and where we find the money.
We go over sales, which includes live calls and negotiations, scripts, role playing, and so much more.
Everything that you need to know to flip houses is in this course. And if there's anything that we missed, we will create a video to answer your specific question.
This knowledge has made us over $1 million, and we're selling it today for just $997. Click the link below.
So one, for market conditions, I think that right now there's a lot more opportunities and it's a lot safer to buy on the lower end. I think that, a year or two ago, like actually it was really hard to buy your like starter homes because everyone wanted to buy those, right? You're seeing a lot more deals on the market, even like on MLS now, you can negotiate down, right? And so I think like the holy grail right now would be like buying in a rental market starter home, ideally seller finance or sub 2, so you can get that 3.5% rate or even 2 or 4 or whatever it is. And that's what I consider a home run in today's market. So like that's kind of what we're going to be doing going forward, like seeing if there's people in situations where like they need help getting out. We'll take some over. We've already kind of seen it. So like I do have these projects I'm a little bit worried about, but we did just buy 2 more rentals in the last 2 weeks or under contract. So I guess I'm at 29 once they go through. But I'm also trying to sell a couple properties in New York and move the equity around. So Anyways, 27, 29. But like, like we're seeing it too right now, like where like things that are on market, like people are willing to drop to a point where it makes sense for, us as wholesalers or investors. Um, yeah. And so like I think the market's changing. We've got to adjust to it. There's a book called Recession Proof Real Estate Investing by Jay Scott. I think it's really great if you're investing in this market and you're trying to navigate like what's easy. I do think though that if you're good enough at what you do, you can do the same thing in any market. So like I think you guys are really good at sales. You guys can just keep doing what you're doing if you're getting at the right price.
Yeah, that's what I was actually talking to Tony and the team about is whenever you're flipping properties, you're buying based on margin. You're not
Yeah.
buying based on, like, oh, I hope that it goes up in value or I hope that I'm getting this. You're buying based on the margin that you see in the deal. So
Yep.
realistically, if the market goes down, you just buy lower. So I don't think our
Yep.
strategy is honestly going to change very much. But of course, again, like you talked about in the lower end market or like, a mid price range, we always have a better backup plan because the cash flow is going to be
Hmm.
there. So I think we're very, very protected where we're at. Whereas in
Yeah.
like, when you're talking those flips in California, you're talking doing flips in Vegas and stuff, like it goes down so fast that your margin goes way, way quicker
Yeah.
than where ours are at.
I think the worry is
Yeah.
the dispo, the disposition bottleneck is like where your money ends up being stuck. And I think you're kind
Hmm.
of experiencing that too from some of the flips that you were telling us about. It's just like, man, this thing is like leaking money monthly, especially if you don't have something set up with a private money lender where they get their money at the end.
Yeah.
You're like have a monthly payment that comes out. It's like, man, that's probably the thing that we need to like prepare for, which is kind of why we started a fund.
Yeah. Definitely. No, and I think like, and just real quick for your listeners, I think that definitely on the lower end markets, right? Like if I was flipping even in Indianapolis or doing more flips in Fayetteville or something like that, like I would feel a lot more comfortable and I'd want to negotiate harder than like I have in the past, like for a little more margin. But I think that it's a lot more acceptable as well in those markets, right? Because I was always looking at least 75% of ARV for the burrs and the rentals, and at a price point, somewhere around 100, 200, maybe under 100, where I can cash flow. When you're in Denver, like in California, the markets, like people have been wholesaling at 85, 90% ARV, right?
Yeah.
Um, it changes the math so much, right? Because it's when the market drops 10%, everyone's wiped out in that market basically, or 15, 20%, right? And so I think like that's like one of the things like, I know that probably a year ago, right? People were talking to you guys like, oh, you guys did like what, 50 deals, but then like your profit per deal was so much smaller, and then you see like other guys in Future Flipper making like 200, 500 grand a deal or something
Yeah.
crazy, right? And that's when you're like, oh, like I want to be part of that. But when the market's this, going down, actually, I bet a bunch of people today are looking at you guys and like, oh man, like that's awesome, like where you guys are at. So I think like perception changes as the market changes.
Yeah, I'm super thankful for the market that we're in, honestly, because I look at how much money they have to put up for the amount of money that they make, and to me, it's a lot more risky. Whereas we
Hmm.
put up 100 to 200,000, and we on our average flip we're making $50,000. So we throw up 100, 150, and we bring 50. To me, that sounds a lot better than throwing up 2 million to make 200,000. Like that's a little scarier for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I think the thing that was happening is like people were going above asking last year, right? So like your
Mhm.
200,000 might randomly become 500,000. And then you guys are working 10 flips to make what someone else did in one flip.
Yeah.
And that was what,
Yeah.
like, that's the enticing thing, right? That's why people chased it. That's why I started moving that market a little bit as well. But definitely like with how fast the market turned, which I didn't expect it to change so quickly. It felt like it was almost overnight. I think people are definitely trying to hedge. And so like our strategy for the flip side going forward is more like honestly, it's one is like flipping in the markets that there's more of a margin. The second thing, like for Denver, would be just to like limit the number of flips we do, where it's like if we have enough cash in the bank and then we have this margin, right? Like making sure we have that backup plan. So basically, always being able to refinance out of the deal. So if the margin's only, 85%, then we need minimum 5%, maybe 10% in the bank so that we can refinance out. Right now, we're getting really creative. I think there's actually a bunch of outs, and I think that's where I kind of excel, is coming with creative solutions. Like, for instance, right, like, you gotta do arm's length sale, right? You can't sell to yourself, but like, if you had someone, right, like let's say we have an 800 grand house that we want to sell, it's a little slow in the market right now. But if we refinance, we'd have to put in on 800 grand property, let's say 25%, it's 200 grand, right? Or if it was 20%, it's 160 grand. That's a lot of money to leave into a deal to get out of it. And we do have some equity, but it's not enough to cover that whole thing. But if you had someone who is willing to be a partner, they could buy it as a vacation home. They're putting in 10% down, right? Then you sell it at 800 grand, like, because it was a flip, we'll have some equity. So let's say that even with the price drop and the equity, now we can, with that partner, we can give them the money that we're making on the deal, or partner up somehow. And if that's like, 60 grand and they're putting in 80 grand to buy the property, now they basically bought our property at a lower interest rate for, let's call it like 4% down or 3% down, right? And so now we're able to get out of that property and create some sort of partnership win-win with everyone, repurpose it to an Airbnb, we can run that for them. And so we're getting creative with things like that, just seeing like what we can do. And there's also, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Jonah? Shout out to Jonah if he's listening. Yeah. He's in Arizona. He doesn't come out that often.
I met Jonah.
Events.
Yeah, he was a super nice dude.
Yeah. So he actually found a 3.5% ARM recently. And he said they do it in Colorado as well. So I'm talking to his broker, but like there's like all these like weird banks and situations where you might be able to optimize a little bit more here and there. And I think it's just right now it's becoming, it's going to separate those who are like good from those who kind of just rode the market. And so, yeah, I'm betting on us being one of the good ones, good at
That's
what
awesome.
we do. So
what does the ARM go up to? So it's an adjustable rate mortgage, and when does it adjust? Like 3 years, 5 years, 7 years?
I think I just
it's
heard
5-1.
Oh, nice.
5-1.
I heard about one guy this morning. He just told me about one that gives you like 3.5% year one. Year two, it goes to 5.25%, and then after that, it's 5-year adjustable. Is that basically the way that one works, or what is 5-1?
So no, the 5-1 just means that it's actually, I forgot what the one part means, but basically it adjusts in 5 years. It doesn't change on the, like, in terms of the rate until the 5th year.
Okay.
So basically for 5 years you're fixed, and on the year after, like on that 5th year, then the rate can change, and then you can either refinance or you just accept the rate change.
Are you letting deals fall through the cracks because you don't have good systems in place?
We've been there before, and we've tried several different CRMs, and RE Simply has been the best.
RE Simply tracks your KPIs, does automatic follow-ups for you, and even records your incoming phone calls.
The system is simple to use and has more features than we even know what to do with.
If you're looking for a great CRM, try RE Simply today. We put the link in the description. Check it out now.
Yeah, I thought that way. The guy that told me this morning was an interesting structure, though. Your first year's like a really low rate. Then the next year after that, it goes up a little bit. Then it's 5 years adjustable after that. I'm like, that is interesting.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of interesting structures out there. And if where there's a will, there's a way. So like if you're in a tough spot right now listening to this podcast, like explore a little more before you commit to like, to a Kiavi or one of the big guys, because in the world of small banks, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of options.
Yeah, I love that advice. Like, it's about, how can I figure this out, or what can I do, instead of like just going with, okay, this is my only option because the market's turning and you get fearful. It's like, no, there's like, look in and find your best strategy. That's definitely good advice.
Yeah.
So we try to figure out kind of like how people were raised and how, like, what their life was like. What was it like for you growing up? Where did you, so it looked like you came from somewhere in California. Is that what got you into software? Like, how were
Did
you
you skip
raised? How
trace
did you
me?
grow up? Yeah. Yeah, maybe you were influenced. I'm just making hypotheses. I'm gonna guess that you were
Yeah,
influenced by the Silicon Valley types to get into software,
definitely,
maybe.
definitely. Yeah, no, so I mean, like, honestly, nobody I grew up with didn't have like a parent in tech, basically, right? So to me, like, I grew up in a bubble for sure. Um, Everyone worked in tech, you know, homes in the Bay Area, like, near the offices and stuff, are really expensive, right? Like, every home is $1 million home. A 3-2, 1,500 square foot is 1 point. I mean, like, when I was little, it was probably like 1 mil, and then, like, nowadays, I don't know about today after the market changed, but like, there's like 2,000 square foot homes, like where I grew up, where now it's like $3 million for a 1960s 2,000 square foot home with like, maybe some people have upgraded the built-ins, but when you're spending like 10 grand on appliances on a $3 million home, it doesn't really matter anymore. So it's like there's a lot of old homes that aren't updated and they're still like $2 to $3 million. Kind of crazy. And honestly, that's also why I never got in real estate. So that definitely affected me. I was like, okay, so like, if I want to buy my own backyard, I need to buy $3 million of debt. I'm like, holy shit. Oh, can I swear a little bit? I just said,
Yeah.
okay. Um, but yeah, no. So growing up, like, everyone was in tech. I actually grew up where in the same town that Wozniak lived, Steve Wozniak. So like all of our computers were Mac computers back when like PCs were more popular in our elementary schools and stuff because he donated them. And then, like where my parents live now is kind of across the freeway from Cupertino, which is where Apple is, right? And then we're 10, 15 minutes down from Google headquarters, and Facebook's a 20-minute drive north. And then I also, ended up going to Berkeley, which is still in the Bay Area, and then I worked in San Francisco for most of my, beginning of my career, also in tech. So yeah, definitely very tech influenced. It's kind of a bubble. Like, while my friends, at my high school, there were kids working for Cisco while they're in high school as engineers. And then a lot of the parents who are coming to the career fair days or the career days for high schoolers were you know people who are managers or like somebody in tech, right? Like we had this one of the guys' dads was a CFO of Adobe, tech company. And he was talking about his career and stuff. But yeah, 100% like very tech focused. I didn't know anyone who didn't really think about doing tech and startups. Um, and I mean, some people looked at doing finance, but it was definitely a bubble for sure. And then also just like growing up in that area, it's like I realized like it skews your perception of a lot of things, right? Like what's important, like skews your perception of crime, it skews your perception of investing in housing, right? Like $3 million home, $2 million home. Like I just didn't even bother trying to start. Because yeah, I mean, like for you guys too, right? Like I'm not sure about where you guys grew up, but like where I grew up, there's no crime. So we actually also had this really weird thing where there's no street lights, because it creates a better ambiance for the neighborhood, something crazy like that. And like the fact that there's no crime means that like for most of my life, I created a lot of bad habits that I had to change once I moved to San Francisco. So like, for instance, um, you know, uh, like I would leave my backpack in the front of the car, or like we would leave our front door unlocked in the house, and like it would be fine, like no one worried about it. Or if you left the garage open, you know, like you would never expect anything to ever get stolen. Um, and then so like I went to San Francisco. I had my laptop bag in the front of my car, and then someone broke my window and stole it. Right, like just little things like that, where it's like I clearly grew up in a place that was a certain way. And that being said, I also felt we were actually like felt pretty poor. I don't know if I'm gonna get flack on the podcast for this. I mean, like we weren't poor by any means. Like my parents were engineers, and we weren't rich, but like in the area, like we were a very standard family. Um, The thing though is that like when your houses cost that much and you're on like, good salary, like you actually are sometimes scrimping for dollars, but you have a like a million, $1 million home, but like you're trying to clip coupons to save extra dollars because like you're trying to fit everything within your budget, right? Because you've got this giant payment. Whereas like if you grew up somewhere where like the housing payment was a lot smaller, like we might have been balling on that income, So it definitely influences you.
Awesome. Well, you said that, or you told us that you kind of tried a startup and then it
Mhm.
didn't go as well as it could have went. How did that, like basically giving up on that dream or like stopping the startup that you had started, how did that change your mindset? And then what did you learn?
Yeah, I think what I learned is that one, a couple of things. First, I didn't know how to do enterprise sales. I was building enterprise software
Like
and
business
I
to
hadn't sold
business?
a business to business enterprise software. Like I would have had to sell to companies that had a lot of engineers. Um, this was probably going to be like, multiple five-figure per year product, SaaS. And your target market has to be upmarket for them to even solve that problem, to want to pay to solve that problem. They need to have a lot of data at the time to use the product I was building. Um, the other thing is you got to be passionate about it. So there's this thing in startup world where they say like build something, scratch your own itch is one of the best ways to do it. I did build something to scratch my own itch, but it was an itch I had at my previous company and my previous job. Um, that was a pain for me, but as soon as I leave the company, like I didn't care about it that much anymore. So I built this thing and I was like, this is not that fun. Like, why am I even building this? Like I had the problem, but it's like just by leaving the company, I didn't have that problem anymore. Um, and then the other thing, I think with startups, you're coming up with a completely new business model and concept, and there's a lot more moving parts you have to figure out. Um, and honestly, like if you're doing a startup, I feel like you got to be really passionate about what you're doing, because otherwise, if you're just trying to make money, you probably should do something else. Because there's proven business models you could like real estate, for example, that you can pick up, and everyone will tell you what to do and what's good and what's not. And it's just way easier to figure it out. So, I think that I'm still interested in startups. I also don't think in the future I'll want to go the venture capital route. If you want to become a billionaire, right? Like you probably need to get venture funded and you probably need to be high growth to like, become a billionaire by the time you're what, like 30 or 35 or something crazy, right?
Do an IPO,
The
go
thing though
public.
is, yeah, the thing though is like, you'll see those people on media, but if you want to become like a millionaire, actually you want to take a high probability path to becoming a millionaire rather than taking a very low probability path to becoming a billionaire. Because what I can guarantee you, like after having gone through like venture funded startups a couple times, is that basically they're pushing you to go big or go home, and almost everyone goes home. Like all these companies, millions of funding, most of them go home, and usually it's a single company that's returning the entire return for the fund, right? Like one Google pays for all the failed startups. Um, but and then within that one company that didn't fail, like only like the founders are going to become billionaires, right? And then for 10 years you're slaving away and you have no idea like if you're going to make it out to the other end. And just like, how real estate can turn really fast, like startups turn really fast too. Usually you're burning more money than you're making and you're getting fueled by this venture capital. Once they don't like you, you're screwed because you never had a business that was self-sustainable until you reach the kind of the end game and you're IPOing or something. And so like I realized that for me personally, I'm fine with just creating a business that creates, options, freedom for myself, you know, like you guys clocking to work out of work at 5, like, that's an option, that's a choice that you can make. Um, and in that I like having a little more control, over my business. I like Yeah. And then I also like not having my fate controlled by someone else. So like I would probably just bootstrap a startup if I did one again in the future. Yeah.
So then talk about how you first heard about real estate, because you grew up kind of without any inspiration at all. What first got you inspired? What made you helped you make the decision to get into it? And then what got you to join Future Flipper?
Yeah, I guess like I think it's the idea of I mean, it was originally the idea of passive income. So it's like, stock market goes up and down, you make money, you lose money, but you never feel like you actually have anything. It's just, and if you sell it, then now all of a sudden your income producing asset's now gone. But then if you keep it, like, unless you have dividend stocks, like, and if you did have dividend stocks, you'd be making what, like 2-3%
Mhm.
cash on cash.
Or
So
less?
just like, yeah, or less. And you're like, okay, well, it's gonna take me forever to retire.
Mhm.
Um, but I think with real estate, right, we can calculate it. Like, yeah, there's like maintenance and stuff that are a little harder to plan for, but like, there's like certain formulas and stuff where people are like, okay, well, this is what you can expect for your cash flow, right? And you can stack it, you can add it up, and then over time, if you want to, you could delever and pay them off, or while you're growing, you can keep levering them up. But like, it feels like something, it started to feel like something where like I have control, right? Stock market, I'm paying someone else to manage a company. However they perform is how I passive, right? Real estate could be passive. It could be, usually it's not. If you're really buying a house, it's not going to be as passive for sure. But you can scale it up and down, right? You can decide that you want to do less of something, pay someone else to do it, or you could do it yourself. If there's a problem, you don't like how it's being taken care of, you can take care of it yourself, right? Like, I just feel like if you want to fix your situation in real estate, you have so much more control than in the stock market. And I also think that, people say there's statistics saying like, oh, well, real estate makes less money than stocks over the long term. That's true if you're buying everything in cash at market price, right? And you have so many levers to speed up your return. And also, as long as you don't go bankrupt, real estate kind of forces you to have some good habits. It forces you to save money, which is basically like paying down your mortgage. That's basically like a savings bank that you're forced to pay into every month, right? Um, Generally, it's going to inflate. It usually doesn't go up and down as much. And because you can't sell things as fast, like usually for most people, it makes it so that they'll hold it through ups and downs. They won't like panic sell, because COVID started. And if they do, it'll take a couple months so they can still sell, but it creates, I think, good habits for people. And with the ability for, people like us to get it at a discount, to flip it, to like apply ourselves into the properties, like we're actually able to do more than just beat the stock market. We can become like Dakota and Tony and become millionaires.
So what would you say is your biggest struggle right now?
My Denver flips. Things are just sitting on the market for a while and slowing down. And in the past, like the market kind of protected everyone, right? Like you hear stories of people who they had problems with their flips and sat there for a year, but it appreciated, and so they made all their money back. It's like, oh, all the holding costs, went up. You paid in holding costs just as fast as the market was going up. So it's like, oh well, you got saved by everything. And then as soon as you listed, like there'd be a bidding war, right? As long as you didn't do a terrible job at the rehab. So I think like things are now starting to shake out, right? So like I have one property that's been on the market for 45 days. We're starting, we had some offers, we dropped the price. People said that price is right in terms of the feedback now. Some people didn't like the layout or whatnot. Someone said it was their dream home, but they're not sure if they're moving here yet. So then, they're not sure they're going to buy. different things, but it was just generally a smaller buyer pool. I think we're at around the right price now. And it's a mountain home, right? So it's not like people usually move there as their first primary purchase, and people generally aren't purchasing as many vacation homes right now. So like we're, that was the one where I was talking about, like we might Airbnb it out, might look for ways to partner with little cash out of pocket. Maybe we take a loan and then like sell it on lease option or something like that. Um, but there's different options, and then I think there's just there's a bunch of them that I have right now. Several flips going on. So trying to get some of them to market. Some of them we think will sell fast, but it's really the cash flow. So my biggest learning in this recession is just to protect your downside, which I did, but probably in the euphoria of the market going up, I didn't do it as well as I can. So I got a little bit of figuring out how to do at the moment, and there's definitely um, some cash flows issues with all the mortgage payments that if we sell quickly, like we'll be fine. As soon as we sell one, we'll be fine. But in the meantime, we're hustling.
What I feel like you would know a few good like books or podcasts. Is there any that you regularly recommend to people?
Yeah, I feel like it changes a lot. So there's a book called The One Thing. I think that one's really good. It's about focus. And if like I think for me in particular, I used to try to do too many things. I still kind of do sometimes. There's the recession-proof real estate one. If you're in real estate at the moment and you had stuff before the market turned, I think it's a great read just to kind of map out how the market might be moving in the future. There's a book called Team of Teams. It's about managing organizations at scale and how to make teams move independently, with less direction, right? Because I guess that book I think is really interesting because generally people think of management as command and control. So I'm the boss, I have to manage and dictate what every single person does. Team of Teams is more like, think about like, a bunch of Navy SEALs in different squads, and they're doing their own thing and coordinating, but very loosely. And then the people on the front lines are the ones figuring out what if anything needs to change, like they'll change it on the fly, and they might not necessarily tell the commander, right? It might not go all the way up the chain. Super interesting book. It's by like a military general, but I think it's applicable to business.
Okay. And then this is one of the questions that we ask everybody. So 70 years from now, you're on your deathbed and you have a final message that you can deliver to the world. It'll be your legacy. It could be a paragraph, a mantra, a saying, a sentence, a billboard. What is your message that you think the world needs to hear?
Well, that's a tough one. Listen to Tony and Dakota's podcast.
That is so true. Thank you.
Hey, Dakota, I noticed you don't talk as much on these. I guess actually Tony usually does talk a lot more.
I usually talk more. I just realized I didn't have that much caffeine. I really realized that during this whole thing. And you know who's supposed to be talking the most? Mr. Micheal Sue. Yeah, I see that ghosty. You're drinking the nasty ghost though. That's the crazy thing, dude. That one's like hard to drink by the time you get to the bottom. The sour warhead, is that what it is?
This one? Oh yeah. No, I just picked it up because I haven't tried this one before.
Yeah, that one's brutal by the end. But yeah, no, I usually talk more. Just tired. Should drink more caffeine. I'm sorry, but let's get
You're good.
Let's get a real answer now. Obviously, they know that. The world knows they need to listen to the Tony and Dakota podcast. They know that. If you listen to this, you already know. What's the second
So
most
is this
important
supposed to be? Is this supposed to be a message, or is this like
Yeah.
supposed to be like something I'm leaving for,
Your
or is it
legacy?
like what
It's
my
gonna
legacy
be
is?
it's gonna be on your tombstone.
It's a legacy message to the world.
I mean, honestly, I think if it was on my tombstone, it'd be about family and be like, something about like a life well lived, and to all my loved ones, or something like that. Because I think ultimately, like, we like talking about business, we like talking about being successful, making money, but I feel like the means to the end, like the reason why we're doing it, this at the end of the day, shouldn't be to make money. It should be, you know, to spend time with your family and to build meaningful relationships with those people. Um, okay, making it more scientific, there's a Harvard study done on people who are dying, who are on their deathbed, and talking about their regrets. It's something I actually looked into a lot in my earlier 20s, because I was trying to figure out, like what should I be trying to do in my life? Like making money feels soulless, right? To some degree, right? It's fun, it can be, but it's also soulless, and sometimes it sucks. Um, but yeah, almost everyone, regardless of how much money they had, they wish they spent more time with family, friends, made more connections with people. And so I think, that says a lot, that at the end of your life, that's what you're going to look back on. So don't forget about that, as you're going through life.
I like it. Yeah, that reminds me of Ed Milet. I always quote him. He says, "People matter and things don't." And so I always try to remember that.
Okay, I'll put that on my tombstone.
Yes.
People matter, things don't.
Yeah, I'll write it for you after you're gone, buddy. I got you.
Damn, dude, you saying I'm gonna die first?
Probably not.
Hey, you're older, bro.
No, he's not even that much older. It's crazy. He's only 32.
Yeah, I know. He's older than me.
Yeah, he's Asian. He'll
Yeah.
last longer than us.
I'm older, but I'm Asian. I won't crack.
He's gonna eat at the Korean barbecue every single day, and we're gonna be out here.
I like it.
All right. Well, how can our listeners get a hold of you, Micheal?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Micheal Sue. I email if you want to talk about real estate, Micheal, Michael at cozy, COZY, cashoffer.com. I also have a YouTube I haven't started yet, but if you go to michaelsue.tv, it will redirect you to my YouTube page, and hopefully by the time you watch this, I'll actually be doing social media.
Awesome. Are there any final thoughts you want to share with our viewers?
Not really. Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. It's fun. It's been exciting to kind of grow together. I think that's the coolest part of the kind of shared experience we've had. Also just joining a program or mastermind of any kind, where like you can shoot questions with people in the trenches and kind of feel like a little bit of camaraderie with everyone. It's been really valuable, and that's how I met these guys, and they sleep on my floor. And that's how you become a millionaire, guys. Actually, that's the takeaway. That's how you stay a millionaire. You stay cheap.
Our message to the world is make friends that will let you crash on their floor. Bring an air mattress and some bath towels.
Yeah. Bring your own towel.
Don't forget the bath towels.
Yes. Every
Critical.
time I'm like, dude, we bought towels the last 3 times.
There's never enough.
Wait, where are your towels? Like I'm not throwing them away.
We found them. They're all in the laundry room in that upper cupboard. So we found them.
Okay.
We're there, yeah. But no, we appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate you letting us stay at your house every single time. You're you're awesome, and you're like definitely a giver, and you're definitely a genius, and I'm sorry that we're not as smart as you.
But hey, we look at the scoreboard. Who's made more the last couple of years?
Hey, we're dumb enough to be working for ourselves. How about that?
It's working out, bro.
For now.
No, but you guys are a good market, man. And like, I don't know, regardless of what it is, the stars are aligned, Lady Luck is on your side, and you guys are, I believe, pretty well protected.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. Thanks again for coming on. See you guys on the next one.